great coaches are always assessing the people they're coaching. They're not judging, they're not condemning, but they are assessing. They're understanding where they need help, why they might need help in those different areas, and how they can most effectively help them get from A to B, C to D, and so on and so forth. For us, assessments is a way to both standardize the beginning of that process and measure some of the impact there. But I think the key is that using the right assessment, using an assessment that isn't just how much revenue have they closed, is so important to making a bigger impact in the salesperson's life, in the salesperson's quality, and in the salesperson's performance.
You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a modern approach to winning business, the application of virtual selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. Why not take our free collaborative selling scorecard to see how your sales approach suits today's environment? You'll find a link in the show notes. And welcome to this episode of the Sales Today podcast, where I'm delighted to be joined by John Richardson, who is co-founder and director of coaching at My Sales Coach. So John, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Yeah, I was going to ask what My Sales Coach does, but I don't need to, do I?
It's pretty much what it says on the tin.
It is coaching for salespeople. There we go. And you make sure that you align the right coaches who are excellent. Slight vested interest in saying that. Yeah, or they're excellent, and there's me. No, but so you make sure that the coaches are selected to work with the right people, the right customers, the right sales guys to get results, basically.
Yeah, correct. So recruiting coaches, making sure they're doing the right things, and giving them the freedom to be themselves as they coach our customers.
Yeah. Cool. So this episode is about assessments, because that is increasingly becoming part of the My Sales Coach process. Why assessments? Let's start at the very beginning.
It's a really great question, and I think the important context for this is that great coaches are always assessing the people they're coaching. They're not judging, they're not condemning, but they are assessing. They're understanding where they need help, why they might need help in those different areas, and how they can most effectively help them get from A to B, C to D, and so on and so forth. For us, assessments is a way to both standardize the beginning of that process and measure some of the impact there. But I think the key is that using the right assessment, using an assessment that isn't just how much revenue have they closed, is so important to making a bigger impact in the salesperson's life, in the salesperson's quality, and in the salesperson's performance. Yes, revenue is the be all and end all, but improving the quality of a salesperson isn't a straight line to more revenue.
Yeah. I mean, if I paraphrase that and I think about my own experience in using them, I'd say it just means you can start to do the right stuff quicker.
Yeah.
Really, you get to the point rather than, right, I'm not going to say it's wasting time, but rather than taking time to assess, to work out, and get some maybe some small wins, and to the point that right now we're onto something juicy that's making a difference, real difference, bigger impact. You can kind of shortcut that and get right into it early doors, bigger impact faster. That's what I found.
Yeah, I think that is a huge part of it. If you you can wait and see what happens to somebody who's not very well to see what condition they've got, right? You can watch them get sicker and then figure it out retrospectively, or you can intervene, do scans, MRI scans, different diagnostics to uncover where should we be paying attention to? Where should we be focusing on? What can we double down on to ask the right questions, to do the right things, to find out where that problem is almost immediately, right? Almost immediately rather than following a series of sessions, a series of consequences, a series of, I guess, building upon bad habits, right? Like it helps you get to the opportunities for growth really quickly, really quickly.
Yeah. The MRI scan is a good analogy, I think, and particularly the assessment we'll be talking about in a bit. And I was thinking about it as I was just prepping for this, and you know, I love an analogy, you know that. And I was thinking about so when I was reffing, so back in the day, and I had a bad Achilles, yeah, and I went to the physio, and he sort of squeezed it because that hurt. Yeah, that's why I hear, you know. Now he could have said, well, rest, because that's what they usually say first. You pay him to tell you to rest, or let's do some of these exercises. But what he did is he said, well, he'd done, we'd call it discovery in sales, wouldn't we? He did more discovery. And so, yeah, what are you actually doing? Well, I'm reffing at a reasonably decent level and I'm progressing fast and I need to get this sorted. So he says, right, in that case, there's a different route we're going to take. I'm going to refer you to this guy who will get you an MRI so we can get right into what is going on. I have a suspicion from my experience of being a physio for a long time, but I want to see inside it. MRI, yeah, it is what I thought. This is what we need to do. It's a more extreme version of what has to happen, but you'll get your result faster and where you need to be. And
Yeah.
it's like that. You know, that was the equivalent of the assessment. He sent me for that to get that done. And yeah,
Yeah.
we got it sorted quicker.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Harder
And
work, but
hard work
quicker.
and maybe a little bit more uncomfortable, right? Like being asked those questions and being presented with the findings immediately might feel like a more difficult journey, but really it's about getting to where you want to go faster and also more accurately and preventing some of the more, I guess, painful side roads that you can go down that might create frustration or added discomfort. Imagine if that doctor had been like, "Can you just show me how you run? Can you just show me how you run?" Like that
Badly, because my Achilles hurts.
exactly, right? Like that would have been useful, but far more uncomfortable than right. Let's take a scan. Let's see what's really going on under the hood here, and then we can fix why this has happened later. But first, we need to fix what's happened.
Yeah. Because so yeah, putting it back into our commercial world, it's basically it's giving you the proper areas for development.
Yeah.
Rather than because there's stuff that goes on. I'm gonna kind of put training and coaching together here, even though we know they're massively
Yeah.
different. But I mean, you've got the training and coaching that I've got a hammer, everything's a nail.
Yeah.
Now they wouldn't get through the doors of my sales coach, I know that. But there are people out there. That's why I train. Why? Because
Yeah.
I can train it. I know how to do this. Yeah. Then there's the sort of right, this is what I suspect is going on. I've been around a bit. I'm using my experience. I can ask some questions and I can work it out. We can pick the right stuff. Yeah, you'll be broadly on the right way. Or, well, let's just actually find out. Bang, look, we've got the data there. We have the data that this is what we need to sort.
Yeah.
Let's build the coaching plan, build the training content, whichever way we're doing it, around that.
And I think so often that impacts with one person in a room telling everybody the same thing, where they might have diagnosed the organizational problem. And so then they've got to hit the organizational problem, but without that nuance of different people in the room with different reasons for having that problem, even if it is all the same problem, you end up not being able to recognize that, right, person A at the front of the room is struggling with this because of their need for approval, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. Whereas person B just doesn't know what to say, right? Like they've got all the right mindset and beliefs and efforts, but they just don't know the tactical stuff that they need to apply. And so understanding those differences enables you to kind of bring everybody on the journey you need to bring them on, rather than missing people and losing people along the way because actually you've diagnosed the outcome that you want, but not the problems that are leading to that outcome or that are leading to that, I guess, negative outcome that's happening today. You can bring everybody on the journey rather than losing people along the way because you might have one person where the reason they don't not very good is because they have a crippling need for approval that I'm sure we'll talk about later, whereas someone else just doesn't know what to say. And so like you can bring everyone on the journey when you understand why everyone's struggling.
Excellent. So you can feed this information. So with trainer hat on, I would build a training course or program actually, because I'm very much into programs, training, coaching, training, coaching, training, coaching around that. But from a pure coaching point of view, you'd feed this into a coaching plan. And again, my sales coach has got quite a cool system to do this.
Yeah,
Can you
absolutely.
give us a sort of a brief overview of how that works?
Yeah, so every and I think just to kind of bring the full picture in here, we don't just rely on the assessment, right? It's not the assessment at the expense of all other information. So every team, every individual, every organization we work with, we collect some of the, I guess, human information, right? What does the manager say about them? What does the team performance look like? What's the organization saying about their people? We then do the assessment that captures a whole bunch of information, a whole bunch of, I guess, emotionless information, information that isn't based on anybody's perception, um, but just their own answers. We then feed that into a coaching plan that creates a list of diagnosed challenges. Those diagnosed challenges are then options that the coach, when working with the person that they're coaching, can together agree where they're going to focus. So all of that information just empowers the coach and the coachee to make a plan together of where they're going to focus, where they've got strengths, where they've got areas for growth, and how to kind of prioritize those things together on that journey, recognizing that they might wake up one day and the world's on fire for them, and that coaching plan needs to take a pause for a minute, and they can deal with the deal that slipped or the promotion that's come up and all those different things. But just gives them a context of the growth that they're trying to achieve together, the areas that they can work on, and I guess the direction of travel that they can move on as effectively and as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, it really gives focus, and it's sort of kind of almost like a job board, Kanban board, if you like, where you've kind of got these are the things we're going to look at. Okay, yeah, we know they're coming, so they're there, they're good, right? Let's not panic on it. Let's not overwhelm. Let's kind of move that into the kind of what's in play now. What are we talking about at the moment? Let's really zero it. And as you say, we might just stop, need to do something else. And okay, right, yeah, that feels as though it's in play. Yeah, it feels yeah, good. Right, so let's move it across to sort of done. Right, where do we go now? Because we identified these things. Is there anything new? Okay, no, let's go on that. Let's slide it across. Let's really work, and people you can really see progress. So it's great for getting the results,
Yeah.
and I mean helps the customer success guys as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. It very much helps the customer success team. But I think the reason it helps them so much is because it helps the coachee. It helps the person that's being
Yeah.
coached to know and be able to articulate to themselves where they've developed and what they've worked on, and gives them a bit of a record of here's the growth that I'm seeing in myself, and here's the evidence, I guess, for that growth, rather than just I really like my coach. I really like getting coached and it feels good to be coached. But actually, here's the progress I've made in these areas, not just based on my opinion because I want to say that it's been good, but because my coach together with me have worked on those things and seen that improvement.
Yeah, and it isn't always a coach, is it? It could be like, right, this thing here. Actually, we can do two things at once. We can coach this bit, but you see this bit here, training. Go on a training course or go to one of the master classes. So go to one of the group sessions. There's different way. Read the book.
Yeah.
I saw this thing on YouTube. Or have a listen to this podcast. There's so many things that if you know there's a way to deal with that, you can have various things in play without. It's about overwhelm. For me, it's the overwhelming thing of trying to do too much at once.
Yeah. And I
Probably
think I
because
think
probably because I've tried it myself.
absolutely, and I think it takes the burden off the coach feeling like they've got to fix all of those problems. To they can be a resource in fixing all those problems. Exactly that, right? Like it might be that there are two or three things that the coach is the superhuman to help that person get better at. But as you say, a YouTube video, a book, an activity, a training course, a group session can fill the gap on some of those, I don't want to say lower priority, but some of those next in line topics that doesn't then distract from the focus, but enables the coach to really focus on where they can have the biggest impact with the person they're coaching.
Yeah. So the assessment tool that my sales coach use is OMG. Yeah. Oh my God. No. Objective Management Group Assessment. Why have you chosen to use that?
So there's probably an infinite number of reasons, but I'll give the ones that matter most to me personally. I think one, nobody's been doing it for salespeople specifically as long and as well as they do. What I mean by that is that they have assessed over 3 million salespeople over the last 30 years, which is an incredibly large amount of salespeople. You know, if you search for sales related job titles on LinkedIn, you, you know, and then compare those two numbers, you've got some interesting reading when you talk about assessment tools. When most salespeople probably haven't taken an assessment, in their career, they probably haven't done something like this. So one, they've done it a long time. They really know what they're doing. But second, it's a really powerful tool because it assesses things that other things don't assess. It's not a personality assessment. It has bits of that, but it's not really a personality assessment. There are other things that can give you a far more interesting personality only assessment piece. It's also not a skills matrix in and of itself. It does a little bit of that, but it's not purely a skills matrix, right? Like doing call reviews and scoring calls will give you a lot of information. This does a little bit of that, but not all of that. But what it really does is it combines elements of those two things, firstly, in a way that is specific for selling, and so is so good for salespeople, but it just teases out of people some of those underlying beliefs, mindsets, and roadblocks that are really hard to one, ask in person because people hear your tone, and two, are just really hard to assess. And they found a great way of doing that that just pulls out the truth. And so when you use this assessment tool, it just gives you such a full picture of this individual as a salesperson. And not that I would use it for this in particular, but you can really kind of make some pretty accurate guesses as to maybe where they've come from as a salesperson, some of the challenges or the journeys they might have been on. But most importantly, it just drives indicators of likelihoods of success. A salesperson
Yeah.
who scores over target in all of the three core areas on an OMG assessment is 92% likely to be a top performer within their organization.
Oh, I hadn't
Someone
heard
who,
that stat. I didn't
yeah,
know that
it's
one. Oh, right.
it's
That's
it's
yeah.
incredible. Now that doesn't mean that there aren't top performers. As I say, there's 8% of top performers that wouldn't score above that, right? They definitely happen. But the key thing is that all of these things are coachable. And so if you don't score that highly, it doesn't mean you can't become a top performer and can't make it into there because it's all things that you can work on, that you can develop and that you can improve on as a person as much as a salesperson. And so yeah, it's both super indicative of where opportunity is to help people, but also as we help people in those areas, it drives performance unbelievably accurately.
Yeah. It is robust. It's when I first saw it, I thought, oh, there's a lot of stuff there. That's too much. So I didn't really understand it. But when I start to understand it, it's like it's the iceberg thing, isn't it? Yeah. Lots of these assessments can measure the bit we see above the water. Yeah. Actually, we don't even need an assessment for it. I can just see. Just send me a proposal. I ain't got any. There you go. Measured. Yeah, just things like that. So, but it's like it's those bits below the surface. So the sort of the tactical bits it measures, and again, it measures a lot of very useful stuff, which is very up to date. Measuring
Yeah.
consultative selling, value selling, these kind of things. That's useful. But for me, it's when we get into the sales DNA part, and then the will to sell. So the sales DNA part, this is where we're starting to see stuff which others don't do. And there's a couple of bits in there, aren't there? There's a couple of things we measured, which I know I found that when we zero in on those, that's where we're getting this speed to solution, or if you like, or speed to kind of getting to the crux very fast. Talk to me about a couple of those things, because I think, and I'm interested to see whether you would name the same two things that I would, as you know, if you talk about those, your conversation's better already.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I will be bringing up the same ones. So the two that just probably disproportionately to the other ones in there are need for approval and supportive bicycle.
That's what I'd have
Yeah,
said.
just they are so strong diagnostics. Not for like successful salesperson or not successful salesperson, but for salesperson that finds it easier to be successful or salesperson that's overcoming a lot of things to be successful. And I'm not trying to attribute any moral value to either of those. It really doesn't matter. It's if someone wants it, they can figure it out, but it's how they do that. So need for approval is all about whether you're willing to do uncomfortable things that you might cause friction with someone around. It's not quite need to be liked. It's subtly different from need to be
Yeah,
liked.
yeah,
It's am I willing to do something that they might not approve of in order to do the right thing for selling to them? So examples of that might be that you're willing to ask a question without having earned the right for it. Like, a lot of sales trainers and sales coaches and people on LinkedIn talk about earning the right to ask a question. Sometimes you don't need to. In fact, you probably don't need to earn the right as much as you think you do, right? That's a rule that you've put in that I need them to approve of me asking that question. If it's a good question, the asking of it earns you the right to ask it. You don't need to have built up to that. There are ways to, and there's all sorts of great ways you can, but a great question is a great question. And need for approval will make it harder for you to ask that if it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable. Asking someone really senior why they do it that way when it doesn't make any sense, or telling them that it doesn't make any sense, right? That's going to create a bit of friction, often which earns you credibility and earns you the right to be there more than not asking
yeah,
it. But if you've got a weak need for approval, it can just make it so hard to do that because you're putting your head above the parapet. You're asking for maybe some disapproval almost
yeah.
proactively.
Yeah, or even kind of some of the techniques to earn the right, like rocking up with I say assumptions just to try and wind people up, but like, yeah, hypothesis, intelligent assumption. It's go, right, I think this is going on in your world. This is probably, you can't say that to them. No, no, you have to. You
Yeah.
have to. And it's your problem that you won't. It's actually a senior person will go, oh, that's cool. It is. I'll talk to you because you get it. Or it's not actually, but I can see you've done your homework. And actually, I respect that. So I will tell you what's happening at our place. But some people are like, oh, you couldn't possibly say that to somebody like that.
Yeah.
It's those kind of things, isn't it? It's really telling, that one. And you can go into some great conversations around it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Puts
absolutely.
pressure puts pressure on the coach though. Yeah. You have to be, sensitive to a degree in how you're approaching it, but you're getting to the point faster.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just helps you to understand the context of that coachee that they they're coming into this with all these beliefs that they might be mitigating, right? They might be putting themselves out of their comfort zone every day and asking those good questions and those uncomfortable questions. But understanding that context for this is hard for you and might be a little bit exhausting for you to do that. Why don't we work through that a little bit? Why don't we talk about the positive impacts? Why don't we try and reinforce some of the positives for doing that and really just help them on their way? Is so powerful for the coach. And what I've seen is that somebody that's got a crippling need for approval, they'll tell you the truth because they're terrified of doing it. And so it's so clear to them that they're uncomfortable asking those questions that they'll just say, yeah, I'm really uncomfortable asking those questions. I don't want to do it. Somebody that's got a really high score and therefore a low need for approval will tell you the truth all the time because they don't care what you think and have no interest. It's those borderline ones that as a coach you've got to be careful of
Oh,
because
it's
because it kind of feeds through into everything they do a little bit, not everywhere, but a little bit. And so they'll start to maybe try and tell you what they think you want to hear. And so being sensitive to that as a coach can be really insightful as well.
Yeah. It's like you say, when it feeds through, the tactical stuff that's been measured, you can start to make sense of it. So you like see low
Yeah.
consultative selling. It's because they don't know how to ask questions. They've never been trained in a spin type model. No, they know all that. Done loads of training, do every year. Yeah. But actually, it's the need for approval means you won't dig down into the, well, what are the consequences of that? Why is that affecting your business? And who else is that hurting? It's like, oh, I can't ask that because they might not like me. Yeah, it's it makes sense of, well, that's the bit we've got to fix in consultancy selling. It's not knowledge.
100%.
Don't go and read the book. You've got it. You know,
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's not just consultative selling, it's almost all of them, right? Like
yeah,
if you've got, I've got a report in front of me and I won't tell you whose it is, it's not mine. Um, but this person has, low score for consultative selling, a low score for selling value, a low score for qualifying, a low score for scoring, but they've got a really high score for need for approval, right? They have very little need for approval. This person needs some tactical help, right?
yeah,
They need some they need some tactical, right, here's how you do this more effectively. Here's how you can get better at asking those questions.
yeah,
Here's how you can consult more effectively. They've got a really high score for hunting and a really high score for reaching decision makers. They clearly have no
yeah.
qualms putting themselves in front of somebody and asking them questions. They just don't know what to ask.
Right. So this is where I have to talk about this on the spectrum of coaching training. I will kind of I'll drop into training mode quite happily. I know some of my colleagues are like, oh, no, 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 I'll tell you what to do now. Bang, right. Okay, this is
Yeah.
how. Yeah, or right, next session, let's book in. I am going into training mode. I'll spend 20 minutes me talking, which is a bad ratio, isn't it? But right, good. What's your action point? We'll go and do it. Happy days. Right, next one, we'll talk about how that went. We'll go back into
Go
coaching
back to coaching.
style. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Supportive bicycle. Now then, this took me just a little bit to get my head around, but when I did, it's like, oh wow, this is
Yeah.
powerful. What's that one?
So that is all the score is measuring is how you buy as a buyer. So it's not anything to do with how you sell. It's not to do with how you objection handle, but it is 100% the diagnosis that might lead to how you objection handle and how you sell. So how you buy is what is all surrounding your beliefs around what buying is, about how it should be. If you're somebody who meticulously researches to find the lowest price, the best value, compares everything, and negotiates really hard and does all this research and effort, you're going to believe that your buyers want to do that. Now, here's where there might be a low score for bicycle, but not be a problem, is you might mitigate that. You might still objection handle really well, not let your prospects push you back with all these things, but you might not. You'd have a tendency in a belief system that makes it hard for you to do that because when they say, look, we need to speak to 3 or 4 other vendors to just make sure we're doing the right thing, there's that big part of you inside of you that's like, yeah, that makes sense. That's probably the right thing to do.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, 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 I
I
would.
would if I were you.
I
Yeah.
would if I were you. And you're not wrong. Like it's not bad that you do that as a buyer.
Yeah.
It's not, there's no moral value to this. It just means that it's hard for you to say why. Why do you need to do that rather than I would. And so yeah, it's all about how you buy as a buyer. I mean, I am so easy to sell to. I would have a great score for Sported Bicycle because I'm like, do I want it? Yes, great. Let's buy it. Which my wife hates.
Mine's.
Yeah, my wife hates it. It causes us some real friction around little purchases more than big ones. But yeah, I'm like, yeah, great, I want it. So for me, that's never been something I've found hard as a salesperson. But there are other things that I do, and there are other challenges and belief systems I have that are hard. But for me, that one's one that I've naturally found quite easy. But I can completely understand people that buy in a different way, and it's so hard for them to just recognize that as a starting point. And it's not something that you'd just come across if you were coaching, right? It's not a normal conversation track, but so insightful to understand why is there I don't know, closing score lower? Why is their presentation approach, the way that they present proposals, not as great as it could be because they're like, yeah, yeah, you need to know all this information today. Let me give you all the information for your research that you need to do now. Well, maybe it's not the right time to do that. Maybe they're not quite ready for that, and you're harming yourself by giving them that information too early.
And I mean, there is one which is comfortable discussing money as well, but I think sometimes in the supported buy cycle, it's when you kind of apply your judgments, go, that's expensive, that's a lot of money.
Yeah,
That's a lot of money for that.
yeah,
Well, hang on a minute, let's get into what is that actually doing and solving, and is it really, or is it just it's a lot of money to you? Because
yeah,
you wouldn't spend that amount of money on software. But you
absolutely.
probably don't buy software anyway. So you've got well, yeah, you've got free Facebook and LinkedIn. That's kind of what software is to you. So now somebody's spending thousands and tens of thousands of pounds on software. So it's like, oh, why would you want to do that? You can get free stuff to do it.
Yeah. What
Kind of that, isn't it?
one of the most common questions I get from someone that I'm talking to who's taken one of these is that one of the things it can pump out as one of those beliefs is that $1,000 is a lot of money, and then they'll be like, "Well, it is," and I'm like, "Yeah, I know it is. Like that's not the point of this. The point isn't whether the belief is true or not. The point is, does that affect when you're asking your customer to give you $100,000? Does that come into that conversation at all? It's okay to believe $1,000 is a lot of money. It's not okay for that to make you uncomfortable asking for it from a customer. That's where, that's one of the scores where I'm not really looking for people to improve that score. I'm looking for people to understand that that might have an impact on their behavior. And once we can deal with that behavior, the score can stay the same. I don't want to change how you buy. I want to change how you sell.
Yeah, yeah. It just gives us something that we probably wouldn't normally be talking about. It wouldn't necessarily come to the surface where we can surface it so quick, talk about it, deal with it, or kind of be conscious about it to start with. Um, so yeah, that section. I'm so visual. I'm using my hands so much on it. I'm like going like if you listen to this, I'm using my hands going section here, section here, section here. Literally is the way the report comes out. John's laughing at it because like he knows what I'm looking at. Um, in my mind, it's not even up in front of me. It's in my head. Then we've got the other section. So right over, well, you start on this section, or the way you read it, is the deeper part of the iceberg, isn't it? Which is the will, isn't it? The will to sell,
Yeah.
where we go into this is the kind of the commitment, the drive, the motivation, that sort of stuff. And that is hard to assess, isn't it?
It's really hard to assess, and there are definitely this one is the one where I think people often will react the most viscerally to what
Mm,
they to what they see. Sales DNA in the middle is all around accelerators or handbrakes, things that make it easier for you or harder for you. And so you can kind of say, well, that doesn't make it harder for me, and that's okay. I mitigated it, no problem. That's fine. It's harder to see a score that's low for commitment and be like, well, I'm a committed person. I show up every day. I get out of bed every morning and I do what I'm supposed to do. Yeah, that's true. And so the key here is what it's really measuring. And the will to sell section is all about, well, exactly what it says, the will to sell. It's not about, are you someone that desires success generally? Do you have commitment generally? Do you have a positive outlook generally? Do you take responsibility generally? And are you motivated generally? It's not really what it's measuring, even though they're the kind of five parts of it. It's about those things specifically for sales. And so, one, if your role is something like a recruiter, right, where half of your job is selling and the other half is managing candidates, and although there's elements of sales in there and it's similar skill set, it's not quite selling. You're not asking your candidates to pay you anything, right? You're not asking them to to sign a contract with you. Um, or maybe you're in customer success. Like some of these things will be a little bit blurry because that's not 100% of your job. But I think the key is, and the three kind of sections that are most valuable here are desire, commitment, and motivation. And I think the interaction between them is the bit that matters. So if we use the going trying to run a marathon example, having the desire to run a marathon is wanting to run a marathon. I have the desire to run a marathon, right? I want to. I'd like to. It would be a nice thing to have achieved in my life.
Think of all those Facebook photos.
Absolutely. Exactly. Exactly. That Instagram
Oh,
would
all over it.
it would pop off.
Blow up.
But do I have the commitment? Right. The commitment is that you're willing to do everything ethically in your power to achieve that desire. I have no commitment for a marathon. I'm not getting up at 5 a.m.
You
and
mean
going
like get
for
up
a
at five
run.
o'clock and go for a run?
Yeah, no, no chance. No chance. I'm not committed. Not committed to
Even
it.
get up at
And
5 o'clock.
yeah, yeah, that is true. Well, I've got
Get the
young
run in.
kids. I've got young kids, so the five
Ah,
o'clock's a
okay.
little easier. But yeah, I'm not running at that time. Running around the house maybe, but different type of exercise. And then the motivation is the plan, right? The motivation is the plan. So if you've got the desire and the plan, that's great. If you've got a strong desire and a strong motivation score, that's excellent. But the commitment will mean that you won't follow through with that plan, or it'll be harder for you to follow through with that plan. If you've got the desire and the commitment, that's great. You're going to get up and you're going to go for a run, but there's no plan, there's no end date, there's no the London Marathon is booked for this year, so I'm preparing and training for that event. I'm going to get up, I'm going to run. Great. I'm going to probably get better, but maybe I'm going to meander a little bit. There's no focus to that goal. If you've got commitment and motivation, you might burn out because there's not a real passion for the thing you're doing. Like you've got a plan, you are gonna do it, and you're gonna just hit that nail as hard as you can every day because you do it out of duty rather than out of desire. You don't really want it, and so burnout is a likely outcome, or just not being happy in what you're doing. The truth is, most people that I see have a much more blended set of scores across those. It's not one's low and two are high. It's maybe two are low or three are low or all three are high. It's a real variation, but they're kind of the three kind of tenements of that section.
If we need to go super deep. So yeah, look, we could get into all of the elements of it, and then look, it's a great test. But so as we start to wrap and come back round, then so there is a thing, isn't there, that if we're not careful, if we just position it badly, actually not even being careful, that people think, oh, I'm being assessed, I'm being tested. Where we can always like start off on the wrong foot when hopefully people listening to this are going, well, this stuff sounds brilliant. It's really going to help us. How do you sort of position it then to say, hey, look, it's not that we're sort of getting ammunition and rocks to be able to pelt at you. It's like, no, this is a different thing. What sort of stuff do you say?
So for me, it's one that this isn't a test, and that there's just not a better word for it than assessment, right? Assessment
It,
is still not a good word.
it's,
There's not a better one,
it
right?
has connotations, doesn't it? But it
It
is the
does.
word.
It does, but exactly. And I think the MRI scan is a good one, right? If you're super healthy, an MRI scan isn't scary because you know what's going to come out of it. It's going to say you're fine. The scary bit is that it's going to unearth some truths, but the key is that getting an MRI scan is a safe place because you're with the people that are there to help you. And it's exactly the same with this assessment, is that it's there to help you build a coaching plan to help you. And look, would you rather get started on the things that are going to be most helpful quickly or slowly? If you're struggling, you want to get started quickly. If you're not struggling but you want to get better, you want to get better quickly, right? Like there's no downside to doing this early to get help with the things that are going to be most helpful to you as quickly as possible. I think the second thing is that I have seen top performers that have bad scores, and I've seen lower performers with good scores. It's not really, although it can be predictive, it is not a qualitative assessment of are you a good or a bad salesperson. And so your value as a salesperson to the business you work for, to yourself, is not tied up in these results. The only
Yeah.
insight out of this is how can you get better results than you're getting today?
That's how I say it to people. It's about getting information to help you get better. And if you look at people at the top of the game, they tend to have more information to help themselves get even better when they're good anyway. And the analogy is like, if you play Sunday league football or club rugby, whatever, you go and you have a run around. Then you go for a pint. And that's it. Okay, good. Nothing wrong with that. That's great. Now watch Premiership. Yeah, Premiership rugby, Premiership football, whatever. These guys are running around. They've got a GPS on the back. They've got a heart rate monitor built into it. They've got 3 or 4 different people watching 3 or 4 different things to get this information that they can feed into them to get them as best as they can possibly be, both in the moment, actually, but also kind of right back into the training field. Right, we're seeing you actually, your diet needs to change, or you need more fitness, or actually we were looking at the video and we realized actually that skill, we can tweak that up a little bit because the other ones are excellent. So we're just going to work on that for a week. Salespeople like sports analogies, don't they? So it's like we're doing that. We're kind of using elite performance stuff to try to help you get better at what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think the one like, and I've never heard this objection, but the one thing that always like triggers my mind there is that what's the alternative, right? If the uncomfortable truth is that you don't really want to be in sales, that's okay. This is going to unearth that a little bit, right? It can tell you that a little bit about yourself. That doesn't mean that you have to quit. It definitely doesn't mean you should leave your job immediately. But understanding that about yourself can be really powerful in terms of how you find one, happiness, but two, success in what you want to
Yeah,
do today, because you might not really want to be in sales forever, and that might show up in your desire. But it doesn't mean you can't be really successful for the next 2, 10, 15 years because it's where you are today and what you need to do today.
yeah, yeah. I know if somebody's wanting to sponsor that for you, to kind of help you with that. I mean, I'm all over it, But
Absolutely.
again, uh, cool. Look, I know we could geek out on this for for much longer, but we've covered a decent amount there. Which if someone's thinking about this stuff or wanting to kind of get their heads around it, hopefully they've they've got something they can understand. If they want to know a little bit more, where can people find you, John? Where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so I mean, John Richardson on LinkedIn is a great place, or John at mysalescoach.com. My inbox is open if people have specific questions. I'm probably better on there than LinkedIn in terms of getting back to people. And then my sales coach on LinkedIn again. We do a lot of content,
Not
so feel free to check us out there.
There's some excellent content. I'm not just saying that. I know the people making that content, and they are very, very good. Yeah. Um, so right, we will drop those into the show notes anyway, so people can just link straight through and ask questions. But John, look, brilliant. Thank you for coming on, spending some time sharing thoughts with us. It's been really useful. Yeah, hope it's going to help some people get their head around this.
Amazing. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, your host, Fred Copestake. I hope you've enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, please get in touch and hit subscribe. And remember, you can take the collaborative selling scorecard for free to check out how your sales approach works in today's environment. You'll find it in the show notes.